حور العين تناديني فدعيني أماه دعيني لتبكي دموعك يا أمي عن دربي لا لن تثنيني حور العين تناديني فدعيني أماه دعيني لتبكي دموعك يا أمي عن دربي لا لن تثنيني.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Let's make dua inshallah. We would start. Allahumma ameen. Allahumma anta as-salam wa minka as-salam tabarakta ya dhal jalali wal ikram. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina wa shafi'ina wa habibina Maulana Muhammad wa barik wa sallam. Allahumma rabbana yassir wa la tu'assir wa tamam bil khair wa bika nasta'in ya fattah. فسبحان ربك رب العزة أما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Continue to our notes, Islam and Muslims in the modern world, and the topic, challenges faced by youths in modern societies. And one of the challenges we were speaking about from our last session was the dress of the Muslim youths, tattooing in the name of Allah, etc. And the question that we should bear in mind is, mind what you wear. Become mindful of what you wear. And this topic we had mentioned a number of points, being that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells mankind on the whole, Ya bani Adam kar anzalna alaykum libasan yuwari sawatikum, that we should wear garment as a means of covering our private parts, and rishan as a means of that beauty within it, walibasu taqwa, but the dress of piety, dhalika khairun dhalika min ayatillahi la'allakum yadhakkarun. That was in Surah 7 verse 26, Surah A'raf. Now we mentioned of what we see society face today when it comes to dress, and what was the condition of dress for children, and we look at all the possibilities of why children dress the way they dress, and we ourselves have also changed from the form and the pattern of clothing that we ourselves used to wear. And if you check our forefathers and our parents, our grandparents, their dress and our dress, we never adopted or continued to adopt their particular type of, as you mentioned, little shoes, jacket and pants. Some of us will not go that way at all, but we moved to something else different. And we mentioned about the people of even the North Americans and the European world. They used to dress normally all the time in fully clothing, and to wear a t-shirt for them was like having an underclothes, right? But now that has totally what? Changed. And society has changed and adopted a different method and approach towards dress. And we looked at that and said that, our youths are faced with that same challenge. And we know that even the elders don't try to dress in a way that is distinct or different from the youths. The fact is that the matter is that it reached a situation in society today that even between the young and the old, there is no distinction basically in the way or the formalities in dress. Whereas long you used to basically see a difference between someone who was basically old, they dress in a particular way that would have been known, as opposed to one who has been in a younger state. Now, that is neither here nor there in what we talk about dressing, because dressing has to do more with modesty and has to do with more with morality. But the essence is that those were the types of traits and trends amongst dress and people dressing over the time. What we have noticed in our time is that the trend of dress have changed. And it have changed not, we would say, to better society, but it have changed to actually cause society to be in a more immoral state. And people say, well, we always use that as a means of telling people or showing people that, you don't have character, or you're doing something that is immoral, or that you're doing something that is going to cause someone to do some harm to you, or you're attracting the wrong direction of people who come towards you. All these things, we are saying that they are only a natural aspect of the human being. Now let's look at our youths, our Muslim youths. And in particular, one of the topics that we were in conclusion from last class was going to talk about our sisters and wearing hijab and dressing in hijab, and especially our daughters in our society today. It is one of the most challenging things for them to wear, because being in a society like this, that in many parts of the world today, that they are faced with that challenge. And that challenge is that people would call them different names. For example, one old sister came to me just recently in a business place and said there was an old man who looked at her and called her a terrorist because she has on a hijab, you know. And that happened right here in Trinidad, you know. So I said, what did you do? She said she became angry. I said, you shouldn't become angry. You should just go to the station, make a report, and let the person know that someone, you know, made this threat and statement towards you, and then you can proceed with it. But don't just take it lightly, because these people, and they will do it to someone else, and then they will do it to someone else, and then they will become more violent, and they might pull somebody hijab, and then they might probably hit somebody or push them or something like that. So they will become more aggressive once you leave them to be on that path that they are on. So you have to change that from them. And that is an attitude of phobia that, imagine an old person will do this to thing. And I mean, long ago you used to have some different kind of statement they used to make against Muslims, but those are neither here nor there. And we would know about those things. But now, we're talking about our young girls who are in society and will have to face this type of difficulty and challenge. Right? What do we do? Or what can we say towards them that we can change that level of misconception in society? And we had challenges here in that situation in our country when, you know, hijab became a thing in our country within the last 40 years or so as a predominant thing in the society. That many women started to wear hijab in this country. And not that they were not wearing before, but not in the amount that they are wearing now. That the amount of sisters are getting involved in the deen and they're dressing like this. Is it wrong, or is it bad, or is it going to cause more harm? Is it that something wrong with them? What has changed? You know, what has changed in the society? Despite their challenges, we see many sisters are also encouraging their daughters to wear hijab. And their family now grow in the environment of wearing their hijab and want to be in that environment. So it is a benefit to us to know how to allow or to get our children more acquainted with society and the phobias and the hates of what we are seeing in our society. And I'm seeing in a country like ours, there's not such big, you know, phobia or such big fear that our daughters should have or women should have, because there are few of them like that. Not everybody in Trinidad or non-Muslims are like that. In fact, as I say, many of our relationship intermingle with all other type of people from our communities, be it Muslim, be it a Christian, be it a Hindu. They are all part of our society, and we mix and we all know each other even by this. So the society that we live in also are not by race, but by our nature. We are also what? Related to one another, and we understand each other's dress. So one of the fear that should be alleviated is that we should not think of ourselves as being someone came from a different country or different place, and we come here with this particular wear to dress in hijab. No, that's not the case. The fact is that our society, we born and grow, we develop here. We not only develop our academic knowledge, we also develop Islamically as well, because education started to come to this part of the world, and Muslims started to grow in knowledge and continue growing knowledge, and the more we started growing our knowledge and understanding our deen, we fit that knowledge into our society, and we live in our society without causing harm to our society, in fact, benefiting the society even more. So the fact is that, yes, we can acknowledge that there is some level of increase, and the fact that we see now some of our youths in a different direction or doing different things, it means that we are acknowledging and we are knowing that there are certain things wrong that we have to fix, and that is a plus, because we could actually know it. But if you didn't know, then you can't fix nothing. It will remain the same. But if you know we have to fix, then we could fix. But if you don't know it, then you can't do anything. That means you're really a total lost. So we still have a plus in us that we can change. And one of the things is that our youth and our young girls today in hijab, we must note and let them understand, not from the perspective that you have to wear. Because when they stand and they say to them, you have to wear this and go outside there, they will face resentment. They will feel dislike and disenchanted. Why? Because you're forcing them to. This is not how we should approach it. What is the quality for this to come into the lives of our daughters? The fact is that when the Sahabas and the wives of the Sahabas, when this ayat of Quran came with hijab and covering themselves, what did they do? We ever think of what happened when that law came in as an injunction and they had to cover themselves? Because there were two particular types of things that used to happen in the past. The women at that time in Jahiliyyah, before Islam came to Makkah, they used to cover their what? Their heads. They used to have something like a hijab. So the hijab is nothing new or covering. In fact, the nuns used to wear something like a hijab as well, covering themselves. So it's nothing new to even Christianity or to even the world in the past they were accustomed to people covering their heads. In fact, in our churches 30, 40 years ago, no Christian woman would go into the church without covering their head. And that is even here in our country, we have witnessed that with our own eyes. But they have fast moved away from all of that. The reason I'm saying this is that in the history before Islam to Makkah, the women used to cover their head, but the difference in their covering was that they used to only cover the garment over their head, and that which is to cover their bosom, they used to take that and throw it to the back and tie it like a knot. So the neck, it was used to be exposed, and their hair used to be exposed, and their bosom used to be exposed. That was their form of their tie. So if we know we have Muslim women doing that kind of style today, they are following the style of what the Jahiliyyah women, people in ignorance before Islam came in that part of the world, in their dress. We understand what I'm talking about. But when the Islam came to them, and some of them who never used to even cover themselves, they cut that, you know, there's something called like an apron, a long kind of skirt with their clothes on. They actually take off that and cover themselves with it immediately when that law came into their life. And they covered what Allah said to be covered, their bosom and everything else that would need to be covered. Why? Because they had the consciousness of Allah in their lives already. All they were prepared to do now was to obey Allah. So if we think that we are telling our children to wear hijab because we are compelling them to wear hijab, the fact is that we cannot do that. It is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who has made hijab compulsory. Allah is the one who has made it that necessary that women should cover themselves. The fact is that hijab is not the only criterion for covering. The fact is that there's hijab of the eyes. There's hijab of the eyes. And that hijab of the eyes is a command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah An-Nur, not only for females but for males too. The ayat comes after each other in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioning about hijab for both males and females. In one ayat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah An-Nur verse 30, He mentions, He says, كُلِّ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, He says, say to the believing men, say to the believing men, يَغْضُونَ مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ وَيَحْفَظُوا فُرُوجَهُمْ ذَلِكَ أَزْكَى لَكُمْ. أَزْكَى لَهُمْ. Say to them, O Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that they should lower their eyes. Lower your eyes. Do not look at things that you should not look at. وَيَحْفَظُونَ فُرُوجَهُمْ, and protect your private part. ذَلِكَ أَزْكَى, that is your purity for you. That is your purity for you. And that is mentioned in Surah An-Nur and verse number 30. So here Allah is addressing the men in verse 30, that the men should lower their gaze. One of the rights of the hijab is not for men, is their eyes. That we should lower our gaze. We have thing called lids. You know, we have lids, covers. You know, I put a cover over something. If you have some nice sweet drink in a glass and you leave it open, what is going to happen to it? Fly with what? Go into it, and when fly mess with it, what's going to happen to it? It becomes contaminated. If you have food and you don't cover it, and fly mess it, you're going to contaminate it. If your eyes focuses on things that is going to destroy your iman and it's going to contaminate your iman, then it can contaminate your entire body. And that is the nature of what hijab is for man. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it clear for us in Surah An-Nur, verse number 30. So it is right for a man to also protect themselves with their hijab. And their hijab is also their eyes. And likewise, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to the woman in verse 31, the verse that comes directly after in Surah An-Nur, Surah 24, He says, وَكُلِّ الْمُؤْمِنَاتِ, and say to the believing women, يَغْضُضْنَا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِنَّ, that the women should also lower their eyes and their gaze. Women should also lower their gaze. There is also hijab for the women in their lowering of their gaze. وَيَحْفَظُونَ فُرُوجَهُمْ, and they should also protect their private parts. This is also evident in the Quran for a means of safeguarding ourselves and our chastity and our protection. So if as far as our eyes are concerned, that there should be some level of what? Protection. Why? You know, and I would say this with, I mean, we look at our young youths today, and we look at ourselves, and let's talk about the youth and chastise youth, because this is also affecting all of us. The society that we live in today, for us to look in society and what we see, it's hard to even walk the street properly if you have to lower gaze. Right? Because of the nature of what women wear and what men will dress in today, they all dress to attract each other. That is the objective of dressing today. And hence the Quran is telling us, what are you going to do with this attraction? What do? You look. People would look. They would see. They would look at other people. And then they become sick. And when they get sick with this sickness, every time they're working, driving, walking the streets, their eyes are all over. Like they're hunting with their eyes. Like they're hunting with their eyes. And not only men, women as well. So it is happening in our society that sometimes they're driving and they're looking over, and before you know, they don't hit somebody else's car, and then they catch themselves. Because decide to look where they're supposed to really look. So they should try as much as possible to know that this doesn't affect only young people, but it affects old people as well. So it is the nature of the hijab. When that hijab is not controlled, when that level of the eyes is not controlled, then it can put us into danger. Not only that, people use their eyes and they look at buildings, they look at all kind of things when they're driving down the road without looking at what they're really supposed to be looking at, which is the road and the direction of where they are going. So hijab of the eyes is essential for the protection of the heart. The eyes strikes at an object, at anything that it is desirous of, and that's when the first temptation comes into us. For example, a person, when he sees something nice, not talking about ladies here now, girls or young women, we're talking about in aspect of what? Just see a nice car. What do you think to tell yourself? Boy, I want a car like that. But just seeing the car alone, not talk about what the car contains or what it takes to maintain this car or what is the cost of the car, but the desire comes immediately to the heart that you want what? A car like that. Because the hijab and the level of the hijab is not maintained. That level of hijab of the eyes, because you could have safeguarded yourself from that. And that is what is needed for all of us, from the elders to the youths, to start controlling our eyes. That is one of the biggest tests for our youths. So, yes, how does this relate to us telling our children this? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, our dress, our hijab is not just about a piece of cloth, it is also about our eyes. And hijab affects both males and females. And that the importance of hijab is told by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so that we can protect ourselves. So we start to explain to our children the rights of hijab by telling them the purpose of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, mentioning firstly about the eyes. The eyes need that level of protection, far less so more than the eyes. So the first level is to us to control our eyes. And letting our children understand that. That's why today, many children, they want and want. Why they want more? Because they see and they hear and they learn about what desires are, and they always want more. And our society have created that they will put billboards, advertisements, all types of things to encourage people in a particular direction. And that is when we use our eyes, we see, and then the desire comes and we want. Not knowing the consequences of that, knowledge of it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions about that aspect of it. So fixing that is firstly fixing the foundation for hijab. Then comes the ayats of Quran that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions to us in relationship to covering of ourselves, basically men and women, and what are the rights of men and women in relationship of covering themselves. And then we tell our children, and we look at them, our youths, our young girls, our young women, that hijab is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect you. Hijab is there to protect you. We say, well, how is hijab to protect you? We say, firstly, let's examine without any doubt what you see in society when it comes to dress. If it is, for example, what attracts people towards you, Do you want people to be attracted to you? The type of people are attracted to a certain type of people by what they wear? Is that what you want? The fact is, if this attraction is intelligence, then it would have made sense. If this attraction was intelligence, then it would have made sense. So for example, if you see someone wears a hijab and she is a doctor, this girl, woman, she's a doctor, and you see a woman dressed without hijab and very scantily dressed, and both of them come to the medical table to do a surgery on you, who you would take to do the surgery? Would you judge them on their dress? What would you judge them on? What would be your responsibility at this point in time? You would take the one with the level of intelligence that you're sure that you will take to give that one the chance, who has the brain or the ability to function and take out the surgery successfully. It was not about the clothes now. It is about the ability, the sense, the mind. So therefore, that person now will be looking at the girl with the hijab and say, it doesn't matter what she covers her head with now, you know. Is what is inside your head is what is important right now. That is more important. And we should see things like this and understand and let our children understand that dress doesn't make her, or not having a hijab and the criticism of society or whatever people say, is not going to educate her. In other words, knowledge is not going to come like that. Your character is not going to be increased in any way by dressing skimpy or with clothes in a particular style. What makes you something in society is what you are by your character, by who you are. And hijab fulfills that. Hijab gives you that. Hijab gives you the ability to be in the environment that is good. So dressing in a particular way gives you the opportunity to be in the correct environment. Whereas a certain type of dress will pull people and drag you in a different direction. So hence, knowledge, the ability is not by dress, more so by how much we decide to put our character in place. But what does the hijab itself does? It protects you. It protects you, it protects your ability, it protects you and safeguards you, and people will recognize you and honor you. When you, who wears the hijab, wears it with the honor that it deserves. You cannot be a woman, in other words, or girl wearing hijab, and then you are doing something contrary to what Islam says. Or you see someone in the road and you start to let them have all different kind of words in different kind of forms, and you have on your hijab and say, what kind of Muslim is that? You know, people ask, what kind of thing is that? Because that is never part of what? Hijab, because you are supposed to shield that hijab. You're supposed to protect yourself under that hijab. And hence, that is also important. You know, I was in a function this weekend, and one sister, you know, a relative who was not Muslim, you know, she was there in this function with us. And, you know, she mentioned to the other girls who had hijab on, you know, lucky you, I had to spend 2 hours to fix my hair. You just lucky to throw hijab over here and your business fix. You know, so for me, it cost me a lot of money just to fix this, just to come to our prayers, but you don't have that problem. You know, I say, she see it from what? From a value of time and money. But the thing is, hijab is just more than time and money. And it takes time to fix it here. It takes a lot of time to do all that dress and spend all that money and do all types of sort of things. You'll do curly, straighten, bend, one day curly, one day straight, all kind of thing, you know, all these different types of styles. Now, doesn't mean that, you know, our sisters will leave their hair untidy under their hijabs or so, as we mentioned. But, you know, they will observe things that they say, look at that, look. They don't have to worry about that. We have to worry about that because we want to look good. So we have to spend all this money, all this time to fix hair. Right? So the idea here is that hijab is not for that purpose. But in their minds, they see a ease. They see a ease, they see a comfort, they see some level of relaxation that comes out of just having on a hijab. That you don't have to bother about too much all these kind of nitty-gritty things that we worry about as women who have to remain like this. And then, what is the effect of this? People, you know, in that condition that they will think to themselves, well, fixing your hair as opposed to what? Dressing with hijab. You know, which is better? Which is better? Not because of the style, But even today, subhanallah, when you look at the amount of creativity amongst our sisters, there was just recently a time, I think a couple of months ago, they had World Hijab Day, right? World Hijab Day. Why? Because the sisters in our society today, in our kind of environment that we live in, they pride themselves, which also encourage other young girls to wear hijab, which is a plus, is a benefit, that they see that this is something that we recognize and worth doing. So there is a positive, and there are things like this. We can show our children, look what is happening. Even the most educated amongst us and the young ones amongst us, they are wearing hijab. They are not afraid to do it. Why? Because they are not doing it for other people, but doing it for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they will go to their jobs, be it whatever professions that they are in, and they will dress with their hijabs and have no fear. And have no fear. And when other young girls amongst them would see this, it will make a benefit to them. It will also encourage them. And that's why, as parents, keep our young girls with girls who are in that environment of trying to dress like this, because it will make it easier for them to fit in the environment. But if you put them in a different environment, it will become difficult for them to actually get into the habit of wearing a hijab for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So doing the right thing without, that level of tiredness and fearing that other people, what they will say or what they will do, that will be eliminated immediately. Why? Because we had the correct perspective to show our daughters, our young women, on how to dress, and that fear will be limited. And they say, well, sometimes people who will heckle them the most will be their family who are near and dear to them, some neighbors or something. So that challenge will be there. They will see challenges when they have to what? Wear the hijab. But subhanallah, if we put the correcting aspect towards it, then it goes well. And sometimes many of us we criticize, we say, yes, the girls now, yes, they wear hijab, but when they wear hijab, it's better they wear no hijab, because the hijab look like it, almost like a hijab, right? And everything real tight up and so on. Now, one thing we have to realize, they have hijab. So don't go and try to criticize them. All right, what we should do is try to encourage them on the other aspect of learning how to benefit themselves. But immediately you go and try to chastise them, and the other ladies go and tell them, next one, and see, no, you're going to run them away from it. But they are living in an environment, and if they feel that they can do this, yes. But more education and more dini aspect of the life, of the virtues of dressing with more modesty will help them. Don't try and run them away from it. Or don't try and tell them, better you have or none, it can make no sense. You know what it takes them to even put it on in the first place? And to have it there? They have some level of fear for Allah in their life. Apart from all the other things that, they want to fit in with the people in society, it takes some time to reach there. So, yes, we might say it wrong, we might say it not the best thing, and we can be criticized for it, and I can be criticized for it. What I'm saying is to continue to encourage your young girls, your daughters. We could gradually phase them into getting the proper dress, even from small, and if they now start and they see the little style, eventually they will feed into the correct style eventually. But we have to be, as men as well, nice and easy with going with them until they can actually fit themselves to the correct form of what hijab is, because there are many forms or shapes and styles for hijab, but what's the real style is that it should be covering, as I said, that part of the body or their bosoms in the way that the Quran mentioned it should be covered. All right, which is opposed to what had happened in the past or the pre-Islamic times. And what is in our society today is far away from that. So, sometimes you'll see our sisters in the same hijab. I'm not criticizing sisters, I say we're trying to encourage them, but we have to acknowledge when we see things that are not right, but we could fix it, but it'll take some time to fix. Inshallah, it will fix. But sometimes, you put on a hijab and you have a short sleeve or something like that, those are adjustments can be made. You just talk to them and get it fixed. But not in a way that's going to run away further from that. So, yes, whilst we are in this environment, we have to know that the hijab for our children, that is a benefit for them, especially our daughters in this particular area. And that we see in our society that no matter what happens in this society, that it must be entrenched in our children's life, that their professional life, once they are needed in society, be it our young women, they learn properly, and they wear hijab, and they go into the government businesses, they're going to schools, they will make a difference and make it easier for other women to be fit into society because they have paved the way for other sisters. So sisters who are wearing hijab and they're in different types of jobs, they make it easier for other sisters because they are needed in society, they contribute to society, and society see a value in them. And likewise, they will know that they are serious and they are important, and hence they will make it easier for other sisters and encouragement for other sisters to wear hijab. So all these are environments that we should set and teach our young girls and encourage them, because then and only then, in a society that they are facing these challenges, let them know that no, you have no fear, because there are many women outside there who wear hijab and they fly plane, who would wear hijab and they will even drive a truck, or they will wear hijab and do all type of work. They will even manage a whole hospital. They are doctors, they're in all different professions, and they have their hijab on. It didn't stop them from their profession. What hijab did for them was to give them a level of modesty, a level of honor, and did for them a better opinion in the way of they actually serving their creator and serving mankind at the same time with their worship of their Allah, in their submitting themselves before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when we look at dress from that aspect of it, subhanallah, what we can say is that what is mentioned so far, and we'll continue that on page 40, where it tells us here that, when it comes to dress, what was mentioned, it said that now research shows that what we wear affects us too. What we wear, it affects us too. Putting on different clothes creates different thoughts and mental process. It wasn't just superhero clothing that affected a person's state of mind though. So yes, having on a young boy put on a Superman clothes, he feels Superman, but he's not really what? Superman. Right? So Princess Diana became Wonder Woman by throwing away what? Her clothes. And many women today feel like what? Wonder Woman. We really have to wonder how far they have gone, because it has thrown us into a different light. Our dress reflects more than what you are doing and where you are going, rather than who you are. You wear a school uniform to school. Till today, that is still a practice in our country, that you wear a school uniform to go to school. Why? Why would you do that? Why would uniform be instilled? We should know that better than anyone else, because we wear standard uniform when we go for Hajj. When we go for Hajj, we wear standard uniform. Why? Because it removes the barrier. It removes the barrier of distinction with someone better than the other. Right? Today, even in schools, one of the challenges that our children face is even with the phones. Who will have the better what? Phone. Who have a high-class phone. Who have a high-class shoes. All these types of things. Because it has reached that stage. Long ago, there was a standardized type of shoes. When you go in one store, everybody in school had the same shoes. So if you take out your shoes in school, it's trouble, because you ain't sure who put on your shoes. Yeah. Yeah. It's called what? Bata dogs. So that was the dress of that time. But nowadays, everybody wants to go with new type of fancy shoes. And that's what the style is. But, it tells us that uniform was there for a purpose. It was there to maintain a level of standard, that no one will be fighting over clothing and looking all that. Is to recognize a particular position that you hold in society. When you are a school child, you are a school child. You're not a school man or a school woman. You have a responsibility, and people in the society will identify you as that. But today that has changed. You see how many school violence we are having. What is causing it? What is causing it? The uniform now has no value even in our children. Why? Because they're influenced by other things that are in their minds. Not the school. Not that long, we never had violence to that extent, but not like what we've seen today. Not like what is happening in our society today. No way. So, yes, our dress and uniform, our school, our hijab, our jubba, our gowns that we wear, they represent and recognize who we are. And being a Muslim and wearing your gown or your hijab or your dress doesn't take you away from society. It doesn't take you from an environment that you live in. It actually fits you into the environment to be recognized as someone of a different status. Just as a child or a student to be recognized for their status that they are in. Similarly, being a Muslim is also being recognized like that. So sometimes people say, well, I don't want to be recognized like that, especially in a time like we live now. More fear in the hearts of people. So we'll come to that point shortly, but just bear in mind what we are talking about here. Even if for a school there is what? A level of uniform. When a person dresses himself or herself, then their character is expressed by their choice of clothing. So the policeman, he dresses in a particular clothing, and when people see him, and you call it, when you see him in what? Khaki, let's call it, or some particular clothes. Once they see them like that, what? They get straight one time. But if he didn't have on that uniform and he looked just like you and he have a pocket, in his pocket, you know, the little fashion ID, whatever let's call it, and then he take it off after you don't beat him. You know, then you recognize, boy, you're a police boy. You know, it's after the fact. But if he wasn't dressed in his uniform before, he probably would have what? Recognize and hold yourself. Even when you're on the road and you see flashing lights, you immediately change your course and direction, everything one time. Because it earns a level of respect. It earns a level of honor. So in doing that dress, it is also that person being shown that it has some level of character in it. So what is more basic to a person's choice than what they adorn their appearances? That is what is important. What they adorn their appearance with. No two people have the same thought, perspective, and desire. And that today is the problem in society. You know, and it happens right before our eyes every day. You know, when a wife dressed in a dress to go out or something like that, if that dress not good enough because you say it's not good, what do you think they're going to do? Keep it on? They're going to change it one time because their whole perspective changed immediately. And this is the nature of what society is facing today. Everybody wants to look different. Different in what way? We are still human beings. No matter what you're dressed in, you're going to still be what? A human being. But what is specific is that you should dress in that clothes that is going to give this human being some level of dignity, honor, some level of respect, if you really want to have respect. So therefore, that will also give you that level of honor. In another test, women were asked to do a maths test in swimsuits. They were asked to do a math test in swimsuit or wearing a sweater with the latter group performing better, the one wearing the sweater. What made the difference? You understand what happened? It changed their whole mentality. Because the person that was not dressed for the occasion of what they are actually there for, and hence they felt their whole system change. You know, like if you are in the office and everybody comes to work dressed in what the office uniform is, and one woman decides to come in the swimsuit wear, do you think she will fit in the office that day? People might quicker not look. They might look away because they will feel embarrassed for her. Because she does not fit the environment. Right? She may not fit the environment. So she will feel embarrassed as well. Yeah. They will say she's gone off, definitely. Yeah. Because that is the trend. The trend is about dress, and dress have a particular way. But for what reason? If we can recognize that, if we can even recognize that basic thing, that we dress, but when we dress, we can be recognized for what we are in an environment we fit in. So imagine a society that is almost not dressed. What can be said about that society? You know, what is changing and what is happening in that society? What is in the minds of the people all the time? What is affecting them? So dress does have an important part of what we wear and how we behave.
Yes, some people doesn't wear clothes.
Yeah, there are people like that in society that doesn't wear clothes in some part of the world. They have their own societies where they say clothing is not really part of the human style. But let's not fall and see what will happen. Clothes is a means of protection. Clothes is a means of shield. So from that exercise, we know that our society is facing a challenge with clothing. And these clothes that we are seeing in society is not sewn by our children. It's not even sewn by us. It is made by conglomerates that use different means of their industries to advance change upon us. To advance change upon us. Don't you think that they know that clothing has an effect on people? Don't you think that they know that? They would know that. Hence, the clothes would come in a particular way like that, so that it will make that change that they want. So what we see in society is that clothing, once it is put into the market, it also brings a particular trend and style and lifestyle in the people. So don't think that clothing is by itself. No, clothing does have an effect. And what we see our children wear, what has been given to our children, what we purchase for our children to wear, note that it does have an effect. And it will create a change in their minds and their behavior. Just as you remember, if that lady comes into the office with a swimsuit and everybody else is differently dressed, how awkward she would feel and how awkward people look towards her. Know how society, because of the mental trend and thought in our minds, how the whole world is bent on trends and clothing that can change and form a society in different places. So we would see it even in our own society. It is comfortable to wear one particular type of clothing for work, and when you go to the beach, you're not bound to wear any clothes, because that's a mentality that is developed and thought out. For what? For what purpose? You know, they say, well, they say, well, that is how you could actually relax, or other aspects of it. But that is not the case. So we see, when we educate ourselves and our children of what is the dangers of clothing, just like the dangers of food and the dangers of drugs and the dangers of so many things that affect the lives of our children, clothing does affect their lives. And we have to be mindful of that. Otherwise, we'll say, nah, let them do this, nah, let them do that. Everything is just let them, allow them. We allow them to do what other people want them to do. In other words, their minds and what we have for them and what they are telling us and what society is telling them is totally two different things. What is important is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants for us as human beings. What Allah wants for us as human beings. Now, the other aspect that we're going to continue to our next class, just to bring up the topic, which the next aspect is mass media bombardment via advanced information systems. How do you feel the media depicts Muslim and Islam, and how does this affect you and our youths in particular? How do you feel that the mass media affects us in the world today? You know, we could simply ask a question in the world today, you know. Years ago, many years ago, in our own society, the Muslims in our society never had a problem with anyone else, and neither did anyone else had a problem with Muslims. What has changed? What has changed that has caused what has happened to us today within our own society for all of these things to happen? We changed from being Muslims? Did the non-Muslims change from being non-Muslims? Did we stop doing the things that we normally do in a society that we live in, integrated with all the different religions? Did that change? What changed? Why we look different at each other for now? What caused that? Now, what caused the separation and the distinction? And we have to think carefully, because not only us have to understand that, but the entire integrated society that we live in, be it you're a Hindu or Muslim or Christian, we have to understand whether or not our minds are being controlled, or whether we are told to believe something that is not existing. That we used to look at our neighbors and we used to share from each other. We used to do so many good things together. We used to live in a society helping each other, whatever religion you were before. But all of a sudden now, because somebody says something, everybody watching you in a different face. What is affecting us? What we call it? Mass media. What is the objective? We have to understand that as well. This is not about trying to say anything else more than what we should understand. Think and understand where our society is going, and especially our youths who are being faced the most challenge when it comes to this aspect of media and bombardment from the media. Inshallah, we stop there today, inshallah. Allahumma ameen. Allahumma tasala wa minka salam tabarakta ya dhal jalali wal ikram. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina wa shafi'ina wa habibina wa maulana Muhammad wa barak wa sallam. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار فسبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
حور العين تناديني فدعيني أماه دعيني، لتبكي دموعك يا أمي عن دربي لا لن تثنيني. أماه طريقي قد وضحى والقلب يسير به فرحا، حرب وجهاد متقد ودم بالعزة قد نضحا. حور العين تناديني فدعيني.